Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. While we're waiting, can you pull up the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen there? You'll see the chat button there. If you could click on chat, and if you can hear me and see me correctly, can you please give me a yes in the chat just to make sure everything's working here? Awesome, Sol. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to have you here. While we're waiting, why don't you let me know where you're calling in from and the type of projects you're working on? I'm in central Canada here, kind of cloudy here today, a little bit of rain, but we're happy that the snow has finally melted and we're looking forward to our very short summer that's coming up. We really enjoy our summers here in Canada because they're a little bit short. Okay, Sol, if you got a duck out, that's no problem. I'll make sure you get the replay and you can check it out later. Yes, we do this webinar regularly, so I'll send you the replay, and by all means, join us for the next live one, and you can answer any questions or ask any questions in the chat there, and we'll help you out. Okay, let me just share my screen here. We need this one here. Okay, if you can see my screen share there correctly, can you let me know in the chat? Can you shoot a yes in there if the screen's showing up correctly? Yes, have a good weekend, Sol. We'll catch you next week. Great. Looks like everything's ready to go here, and it's right at the top of the hour. We do like commissioning that's on time, so we'll get started here right on time. All right. So today's presentation is on best practices for capital project commissioning using the top-rated commissioning software and the industry best workflows and templates for commissioning. So you're about to get the industry best approach for completing capital projects during commissioning. And this presentation is meant to be interactive, so it's good everyone's got the chat window up there. If you have any questions at all as we're going through the material, shoot your question into the chat. I've got it open here too. I'm watching for your questions and I'll make sure I get them answered. I'll also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation as well. If you'd like to stick around and ask any questions at the end, that's just fine too. We'll make sure you get the commissioning information you need so that we can help you succeed with your projects. Now, I've used this approach to commissioning that we're going to discuss today on several projects. I started out applying these advanced commissioning principles in the aerospace industry, actually building satellites and rockets for the Canadian Space Agency. I then used the same approach to commissioning in the power industry, working on hydroelectric generation projects as well as HVDC transmission projects. I've applied these same principles in the water treatment industry on mechanical projects where we were expanding and upgrading wastewater treatment plant facilities. I'm also the president and chair of the Industrial Commissioning Association, which is a worldwide community of commissioning experts, and we're helping capital projects apply these same commissioning best practices to their projects and elevating the importance of commissioning on projects as well. Now, I'm not the only one getting results with this approach to commissioning. We've helped over 200 people with commissioning of their projects. For example, Sheldon or Jonald or Kale and many others, after working with us, they all tell me the same, that this was an eye-opener. They had no idea everything that was all involved in commissioning. Once they've worked with us and gone through our programs, they tell me that this was the first commissioning process they've found that fully matches with what really happens at site. And that's because it is. This is based on real world experience. This isn't some theoretical standard or textbook definition of commissioning that nobody really understands. This is real world practical commissioning applications in the field. After working with us, they all tell me that they just realized the power of CMS software and how it actually helps projects. What they were doing 6 years ago manually, software now does that, and it's eliminated a lot of those manual tasks. So they're quite impressed with some of the tools that exist out there now. And you can go to our site at commissioningandstartup.com. At the top, you can click on the success stories, and you can read about all the other people that are having great success with these commissioning principles on their projects. So everyone's saying this is great stuff. It's helping a lot of people complete their projects, and this can definitely help you on your projects too. So just to be clear, though, this is not technical commissioning. If you're looking for how to commission a 230 kV switch yard, or you're looking for specific flushing standards for food grade piping, or if you're looking for how to perform a high pot test, for example, in the field, you're not going to get any of that here. That's not what this presentation is about. But technical commissioning is not typically what's missing on projects, though, is it? There's a lot of smart people working on projects, and they'll get the testing completed one way or the other. What's often missing on projects is the structure that's supposed to go around the technical commissioning. What's missing on projects are the project management processes for commissioning that take place before on-site testing even starts, so that you can ensure your technical commissioning experts have what they need at the end of the project, and your technical commissioning goes much more smooth. This presentation is for project managers and commissioning managers that need to understand how to create and implement an industry best commissioning process. This presentation is for engineers and technicians that want to understand how to follow and execute industry best processes. Really, for anybody that's working on projects, everyone should understand how to finish projects during commissioning, and everyone should understand the commissioning process to achieve your project objectives. This is also for project owners and developers that want to set their projects up for the best chance of success during commissioning. So if this sounds like you, then I'm glad to have you here. I'm on a mission to help everyone on projects understand commissioning. It's such a critical part of projects, and the commissioning process is really not that well understood at all. And projects are suffering because of this. The only way we're going to be able to improve commissioning on projects is with knowledge and information, and that's what I'm here to help everyone understand on projects. What we're going to discuss today are the best practices for capital project commissioning. Some projects are certainly operating at this high level, but many others are not. There are certainly varying degrees of how well project teams are implementing some of these commissioning principles on projects, and we'll go through a lot of that in the presentation. So regardless of what level you're at on your projects for commissioning, we help anybody at all of these levels to elevate their commissioning processes to get to some of these more advanced principles that we're going to discuss here today. So can you make me a promise? Can you promise me that you'll take the next steps that we're going to discuss here today to improve your commissioning processes on projects? Can you promise me that even if it's just baby steps, that you'll be able to work towards better commissioning on your projects? Because a lot of this isn't going to happen overnight. It's definitely an iterative process, but if you can promise me to work towards the ultimate goal of these commissioning best practices, then we can start to make a difference and really start to improve the outcomes on our projects with better commissioning processes. So if you think this is a good idea to work towards applying commissioning best practices on your projects, then write yes in the chat if you're on board. If you think that improving commissioning on projects is a good idea. And I can help you with this if you need. Just let me know with a yes in the chat if you think this is a good idea to elevate the importance of commissioning on projects and have all groups on projects work together to achieve your project and service date. So Gulam's got a question. I want to know authorization and accreditation. I read that it's PMI approved, but the certificate I don't see on the PMI website. That is a good question. I actually emailed PMI yesterday to see why there's a delay. They haven't responded to me yet today, but check back in a few days on PMI's site. I will get that fixed so that is listed there. We did just recently get approved as an authorized training partner, so it looks like PMI's website isn't quite updating yet, but I'll get that fixed for you on PMI's site so that you can see it there. You might be wondering whether you can or you can't do what I'm going to share here today once we get into some of the details. And this is a valid concern. Commissioning is complex, right? And there's lots of obstacles to achieve our end goal at the end of projects. And I'm sure you've seen projects that have failed many times with commissioning. What you really want to know is, will this time be any different? Will you finally get the solution you've been looking for all this time so your projects can be successful with commissioning? And I believe that you can get this done. We get to the actual root cause of problems with commissioning on projects. This isn't superficial Band-Aid stuff or some superficial Band-Aid fix. These are the processes that get to the heart of the issues typically encountered on projects. You can make lasting improvements on your projects and make a lasting effect with better commissioning processes. Now, you won't get all these problems sorted out with commissioning overnight. It is an incremental process for sure. But when we get this information in the hands of the right people on projects, then we'll all start to see improvements on project completions, because commissioning really is the guiding process to finish capital projects, and we need robust commissioning processes to do that. There are 6 fundamental areas to focus on for commissioning success, and I'm going to show you all 6 areas today. Most projects are missing some or all of these 6 commissioning principles, and I'll show you today what often gets missed. So I'm confident you can get this done in your projects, and I'll show you how to cut through the noise so you can get to what really matters on projects for commissioning success. One thing I will guarantee you is that if you don't start making these commissioning process improvements on your projects, your commissioning will always be a struggle. You're going to get left behind pretty quickly if you don't start working towards these advanced commissioning principles. So you're going to hear me talk today about commissioning maybe a bit differently than what you've heard before. That's because we can no longer take a superficial approach to commissioning on projects. We need to be implementing more holistic concepts for commissioning that actually produce better results for projects. And the world is changing pretty fast with an unprecedented amount of work on projects. The time for change is now if we want to see better results on projects. So let's start with a simple org chart. There's, of course, 3 main functions on a project, right? We need to get it designed, and then we need to get it installed during construction, and we need to test everything at the end as part of our commissioning process. Or if you're working on an EPC contract where design and construction are part of the same group, this still all applies as well. There's typically someone to manage the design, and they're following best practices for design to make sure all disciplines align. And there's always someone to manage construction. There's an entire industry dedicated to construction project management. But where are the systems and processes for commissioning? On a lot of projects, they don't even exist, or maybe there's only a few spreadsheets for commissioning, and commissioning becomes a scramble to complete at the end because there was no organized approach through all stages of projects. When the last part of your projects, the most complex part when everything has to start working together as one system, has no structured systems or processes to make sure everything is complete, commissioning can be a nightmare at the end. There is a gap in the industry for sure, and commissioning often gets overlooked while groups are focused on design and construction activities. And it's no wonder projects are late and over budget when projects have no standardized method to complete commissioning. So this is the gap that we help you fill by helping everyone on projects understand commissioning so we can all work together and collaborate together, and everyone can contribute to the success of projects during commissioning together. Without a structured process to complete commissioning that starts early in your projects, then project teams are just gambling. There's no way to get consistent results from projects. And as long as you're relying on people to manually track commissioning in spreadsheets, your outcome will vary every time. With no standardized way to complete projects, it's the Wild West. You roll the dice and you see what happens when you get to the end. And I'm sure you've had this experience on projects where some projects go really well during commissioning and other projects are quite difficult to complete because there was no process earlier in projects for commissioning. I do want to share some statistics with you that are quite concerning. This is Professor Bent Flivberg. He's from the University of Oxford, and he's compiled a database of over 16,000 projects from the last several decades. He's also written a book. It's called How Big Things Get Done. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. It's definitely a good book. What Professor Flivberg's research shows is that only 8.5% of projects are on time and on budget. That means that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. That's not very good. The construction industry definitely has a terrible track record, and the complexity of completing construction and commissioning is one of the main contributing factors to delays when there is no consistent approach to commissioning. A lot of projects ignore commissioning until it's too late. They're missing important aspects in contracts, or they're missing details with their paper and spreadsheet processes, and leaving everything to the end for the poor commissioning guys to make sense of at the end of projects, when it's much more expensive to fix issues during that stage of the project. So today I'm going to show you what successful projects are doing to beat these odds and get success with commissioning. But first, let's address the problems of what not to do for commissioning before we talk about what to do. We know that projects are having problems, right? We know this because the data tells us this, that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. Project teams are deferring commissioning until too late in projects, and they're losing time during commissioning and missing their project and service dates. But why is this? Why are projects struggling to complete commissioning? We need to address these problems before I show you what to do for commissioning. Now, there's two common mistakes that are often made on projects, and just by fixing these two mistakes, projects can see huge improvements. So what are these two mistakes? Mistake number one is leaving commissioning to the end of projects. We've been told for decades that commissioning takes place at the end of projects, right? We need to finish construction and then we need to test everything at the end. But this is actually not true. This is what a lot of projects do. They start to think about commissioning maybe a few months before on-site testing starts, but this is what leads to problems on projects. When commissioning is left to the end of projects, you're missing 3 of the 6 areas of your commissioning process. And when you're missing half the process, then it's no wonder on-site testing never goes well at the end. In fact, to be successful, your commissioning process needs to start during feed once your equipment tag lists are available. Your project WBS rarely aligns with your commissioning and startup sequence, and you need to realign your project with a systems-based approach early in your projects before the damage is done. If you don't get this right early in your projects, then it's pretty tough to fix later. And as you know, it's a lot more expensive to fix mistakes at the end of projects than to get things set up properly right from the start. It's exactly like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Habit number 2 is to begin with the end in mind. And this is how capital projects must begin, with the end of your project during commissioning in mind. All project groups must have a clear vision of what success looks like during commissioning, starting right at the beginning of projects. The only way to do that is by defining all your commissioning processes earlier in your projects in a way for all people to easily understand, regardless of their level of experience with commissioning. There's just no way to successfully complete projects unless all groups start with the end in mind. And it's like that for everything. Projects are really no different. You wouldn't go on a road trip without first determining where you're going to go or where you're going to stay on that first night. It's the same for projects. You need a clear vision of what the end looks like before hitting the gas at the beginning of your project. Your commissioning process must be clearly established early in your project so that everyone knows the details of how to get to the end and how their role contributes to the success of commissioning. Mistake number 2 is a lot of projects are still using paper and spreadsheets. And in today's information age, spreadsheets just don't cut it anymore. While spreadsheets were fine maybe 20 or 30 years ago, and a lot of projects are still doing this because it's the way it's always been done, projects are just far too complex now. There are just too many documents and too much information, and it's impossible to keep track of manually in Excel. Things will get missed every time that cause major delays later. Colin's asking, at what % of project would you say you need to change from areas, construction, to systems? In our experience, 60 to 70%. Is that about the same with other folks' experience? So that's a good question. Certainly, we want to allow construction groups to perform their means and methods that best optimize construction and their workflows, right? It's more efficient for construction if they install in a certain sequence. But you're right, about 60-70% that needs to start aligning with a systems-based approach. So construction can build in whatever sequence and whatever optimized methods they need, but at the end of construction, that needs to align with a systems-based approach. So you can install the full length of piping, but maybe one particular subsystem only needs 10% of that piping. That construction sequence needs to fall into line with a systems-based approach when we get to static completion or mechanical completion or however it's defined in your contract. And I do have some more discussion on what that looks like. So we'll go through that here in the next few slides. So if you look at this spreadsheet on the screen, this is pretty much what every tracking sheet looks like for commissioning, right? A bunch of items here tracked with due dates and problems, and maybe there's some fancy Excel macros that are built in that people are using to think that it's helping them with commissioning. But this isn't really a process, right? This is a to-do list. There's just no way that a simple program like Excel that's been around for 40 years can manage a process as complex as commissioning. Spreadsheets may be fine as a list of things to do, but they're just not suitable as a tool to manage a process. I've worked on projects that have used Excel for commissioning, and it's a nightmare. Pretty soon you have so many lists that you need a list of your lists just to keep track of all your lists. It's brutal, and you spend all your time in meetings reviewing all these lists. I hate it. And they're always out of date. You're always waiting for Friday's update to see what's done in your lists. Spreadsheets are just an awful brute forced way to manage commissioning. It's it's not really anyone's fault for using Excel because it's on all our computers and it's easy to use and it's familiar, right? So Excel is the go-to tool for most engineers, right? So it's natural to get stuck in this trap and defaulting to what you easily have access to, but spreadsheets are never going to help others on your project understand commissioning. Maybe you understand what's in the spreadsheets and what's being tracked, and they help you complete commissioning, but others on your project certainly don't have a clue or understand what's in your spreadsheets, and they don't provide any meaningful explanation of the commissioning process to help others understand how to finish projects. If you put yourself in their shoes and you give them the spreadsheet, say you give one of your design engineers a spreadsheet who isn't as familiar with commissioning as you are, what does it tell them about the commissioning process? Nothing. It gives them a list of problems and when they need to be done by, but it tells them nothing about the stages of commissioning or what takes place during each stage or how their design role contributes to the success of commissioning. It tells them none of that. So even if you understand what's in your spreadsheets, everyone else on your project has a different understanding of what's required for commissioning. And when everyone on your project has a different idea of how to finish your project, then there's a pretty low probability that you get what you need at the end. Successful project teams are no longer using antiquated paper and spreadsheets, and I'll show you what they're using. Is today's topic including any commissioning aid software? You bet it is. Yep, we got a whole section on it. I got a whole list of the options available that you can check out, and even some more resources you can get access to tap into some case studies and reviews of these systems so you can find the best one for your projects. So when projects don't have well-defined commissioning processes that are defined in software, and actually used to manage your commissioning processes on a day-to-day basis, then there's no way to show everyone how to get to the end of your project. We need more collaboration on projects for commissioning. So project teams can work together and solve problems together, but when only a few people understand what's in your spreadsheets for commissioning, then it's pretty tough to collaborate. And when new people join your commissioning team, then there's no way for them to learn and understand your processes in an efficient manner, other than what's been done for decades is just trial and error, throw them out in the field and tell them to learn on the fly. But that's a pretty difficult way to learn. When everyone has a different understanding of what's required for commissioning, then it's pretty tough to get to the end, which is what we see on a lot of projects, right? With no clear view of commissioning, project teams spend more time talking about the work rather than actually getting the work done. And we don't need more meetings on projects. We need a better way to organize our teams so we can complete projects more efficiently during commissioning and collaborate better during all phases of projects. When project teams make one or two of these common mistakes that are made on projects, when they leave commissioning to the end or they're still using spreadsheets for commissioning, we call this cowboy commissioning. Cowboy commissioning results in a scramble at the end of projects to complete commissioning. There's missed deadlines and delays during commissioning that are quite expensive to fix. Cowboy commissioning is just not an efficient way to complete projects, and it wastes a lot of time and money on capital projects. So let me know in the chat. Do your projects use cowboy commissioning? Put yes in the chat if you've had some of these experiences on projects where there was just no organized approach to commissioning. If you've experienced cowboy commissioning, then put yes in the chat. I'll put yes in the chat because I've been part of those projects where um, uh, it's just been that cowboy approach, right? Which is why the current project I'm on right now, trying to support, is 3 years late and millions of dollars over budget, is because there was just no systems-based approach earlier in projects, and it's led to a disaster at the end. So we've all had these experiences on projects, and it's because people aren't following commissioning best practices starting earlier in their projects. Okay, so these are the two common mistakes made on projects, and these are the two main reasons for problems during commissioning. If you can fix just these two things by replacing spreadsheets and by getting commissioning processes established early in your projects, then you'll be able to make huge improvements on your projects to complete commissioning as efficiently as possible and have a much better strategy to complete commissioning. I see lots of yeses. Yeah, Colin says plenty experience on that front, but it followed on from the EPC contractor. Yep, there's definitely a complex interface there that we'll talk about here shortly. They tried to do pre-com instead of the commissioning team. Yep, lots of challenges there for sure. Yeah, so we'll go through how to address some of that. And let's go through that right now. So there's really 6 main components of the industrial commissioning process. The 6 components are contracts, systematization, your CMS software, offsite testing, construction completions, and on-site testing. And we'll go through each one of these here quickly, just so that you have an overview of each of them and how they fit into your overall commissioning process. So the first aspect of industrial commissioning is your contracts, of course. Contracts define the rules of the game. And if the rules for commissioning are poorly defined in your contracts or missing altogether, then it's pretty tough to play the game and you're not likely going to win in the end. A big red flag on projects is when commissioning responsibility is assigned to existing groups on projects such as design groups or construction groups, because commissioning responsibility requires an independent group, either the owner's vertically integrated commissioning team or a separate commissioning contract reporting directly to the owner, because you can't have design or construction groups verifying their own work during commissioning. It's a conflict of interest, right? And it's not anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the business. When there are cost and schedule pressures on projects, and there will always be cost and schedule pressures on projects in a confined or contained set of activities like a project with a defined start and a defined finish. When you're in these cost and schedule pressures, it's human nature to prioritize time and money at the sacrifice of quality. It's just the way it is, and we have to accept that human nature, right? So this is why it's critical to define this complex interface between construction groups and commissioning groups, because this handover process between these two groups is a complex part of projects and will always exist and requires detailed planning to make sure it goes smoothly. Process was not followed by on short time projects. Yeah, that's an issue for sure, which is why we need to make sure that a lot of this stuff is contractual, because we'll never be able to force people to do a lot of this stuff. But when it's contractual, it does become a lot easier. If you have the same group handing over MC to pre-com, there is a conflict of interest. Absolutely, yep. Well, you'll sign off anything, right? Just to move to the next one, next stage to get things done, even if things are only half completed. Happens all the time, yep. A trap that a lot of people do fall into is that thinking that commissioning can't be defined until later in the project. And this may be true for some of the technical commissioning details. A lot of the technical commissioning details can't be determined until designs are completed. Of course, that makes sense, but it's absolutely false for the commercial and project management aspects of commissioning. Both of these are very well known at the beginning of projects when construction contracts are being written, while the technical commissioning details can be defined a bit later in the project. Unfortunately, all of this gets lumped together as commissioning because a lot of people assume commissioning is just testing at the end of projects, and it all gets deferred to the end. And the damage is done on your projects before they even begin because your contracts were never structured correctly, right? When construction contracts are written properly with commercial and project management aspects of commissioning, there's a lot less confusion between these two groups. Both your construction groups and your commissioning groups are able to work together much more collaboratively when it's properly structured in contracts, and you'll get a much smoother transition from construction to commissioning when the rules of the game are set up properly in contracts. However, when construction contracts are missing details for commissioning, or worse, are silent on completions and commissionings. We see some contracts that just say have a single line commissioning and startup. Well, that's not very helpful. Things are not going to go well on your project, and it might seem like things are going well until your on-site testing starts, right? And then nothing works. Things are missing, and you're faced with expensive delays during on-site testing that cause you to miss your in-service date. Another trap a lot of people fall into is thinking, well, I don't do contracts. That's for my legal and procurement groups to figure out. Well, I assure you that your legal and procurement groups are not that familiar with commissioning. It's just not their area of expertise, right? They're looking to you as the commissioning experts to provide them guidance and tell them what to include in contracts. And if you don't make sure contracts include commissioning, then nobody else is going to. So you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and get in there to help these groups understand commissioning and make sure the right things are included in contracts, because the success of your commissioning depends on it. So there are three critical aspects to include in construction contracts for commissioning. These three aspects provide clarity to all groups involved on what is required to complete projects, because it's not helpful when only a few people on your commissioning experts understand the end of your project. We need everyone to have visibility and clarity in contracts so they have a crystal clear picture of the goalposts that need to be achieved at the end of your project. So what are these three aspects that need to go into contracts? The first one is definition of each of your static completions. What this means is what is required for all physical equipment, what is required for all document deliverables, and what must be included as in each part of your static completions. The second aspect in construction contracts is, of course, your sequence of static completion. So we briefly touched on this a bit earlier, but there's a definite sequence and grouping of equipment that's required to line up with your commissioning sequence and your startup sequence. And however construction has completed their activities, we need to have the end of construction, your construction completions, align in this static completion sequence so that each portion of the project is handed over in the right sequence and can be commissioned in the proper sequence. Because your project typically only has one startup sequence. There's one definite technical order of systems that need to be started up in a proper order to achieve your project in service date. And all subsequent activities, your commissioning activities, your construction activities, need to start lining up with that if you hope to achieve your startup sequence. A third aspect in your contracts is your commissioning software. How are construction groups expected to interact with your CMS software, which we'll talk about more in a minute here. I've got some slides on that. and what are the gated workflows that all of your groups on your projects will follow for commissioning. This all gets defined in software, and this needs to be defined up front so there's no surprises later. When you get these three aspects correctly defined in your construction contracts, then what you have properly defined is who, what, and when that's required for your commissioning and startup sequence, right? When you get these three things defined, you're giving all earlier groups a clear understanding of what they need to do to ensure commissioning is successful. However, when this isn't defined in contracts, what you get is a hodgepodge mismatch of what others have assumed was required for commissioning, and that's not going to work, is it? It's not really their fault. When commissioning wasn't properly defined in construction contracts in the first place, all they can do is assume what they need to do or work to their best work sequences and deliver whatever they think is appropriate to commissioning. But when this takes place, it's no wonder that things are missing for commissioning when construction contracts didn't properly define what was required in the first place. When this complex interface between construction and commissioning is not properly defined, then you can't possibly expect to get what you need for commissioning. Commissioning is complex, and other groups are not mind readers. They're not going to be able to figure out what's required if it's not properly defined in the first place. So you don't have to worry, though, because you may be in the situation where you're joining a project after construction contracts have been awarded. This is very common, right? It's sometimes not up to our decisions, and we're joining projects after construction groups have already mobilized and the work has already started and contracts were already awarded. This is very common. So you may find when you're looking at the contract that a lot of these things aren't in contracts and they're missing, right? This is very common as well. So we do have processes to clean up some of the construction contracts after the fact to address any of these gaps in commissioning, because you certainly don't want to leave any of these gaps open. You'll have a lot bigger problems later in your projects if you ignore some of the gaps in your construction contracts and just plow forward anyways. Okay, so some comments here. I would also add that an experienced planner needs to be well integrated at this point. Absolutely critical function to give everybody that visibility into the sequence of what's required here for sure. I was on a project that had the construction team use a different CMS for commissioning due to contracts issue. It was painful to say the least. Yep. Those two systems do need to line up. I do get lots of questions. Is there that all singing, all dancing software system that spans design, construction, commissioning? And I don't think there is. And I don't know if there ever should be, because design has different functions than commissioning, than has construction. If that software were to come to be, it might do everything kind of somewhat. There's still specialized software for design. There's still specialized software for construction, and we do need to be using our specialized software for commissioning. It is very possible to make those systems all line up when this is properly structured. It's a challenge for sure, but yeah, you're right in raising that point that if it's not done properly, it can be very, very painful. So the next aspect of your commissioning process is your project systematization. So projects that take a systems-based approach starting early during FEED have a much higher chance of success. Your project has one in-service date, right? And there's typically only one sequence that you're going to follow for startup that can achieve your project in-service date. There's always technical dependencies for every project, right? For example, System C can only be started up once System A and System B are completed as a prerequisite. Therefore, the work needs to be completed in a very specific order to align with your commissioning and startup sequences to meet your project and service date. The problem is the design engineers optimize. I wouldn't necessarily this is a problem, but this is typically how it's done, right? Is design engineers are going to optimize for their design workflows, and construction groups are going to optimize for their installation workflows. And we certainly need them to do that, but neither of those are going to align with what is actually required for commissioning and startup. we get systems in the wrong sequence and they're missing things, and we don't get what is needed to achieve our project and service date. This is fixed by systematizing your project early during your feed processes, because this gives everybody early visibility into what success looks like during commissioning. They're still going to optimize to their design. They're still going to optimize to their construction sequences, but they know how that's going to fit in towards the end of construction to align with commissioning. So when projects are systematized during feed, all groups on projects understand the sequence that's required for a successful startup. This sequence is included in construction contracts, like we discussed earlier, and all phases of projects align in the end to achieve your project and service date. However, when systematization is done later in projects, each phase of projects is, of course, going to optimize to meet their own isolated needs, and groups end up working in silos with nothing coordinated amongst groups, and things end up just being thrown over the fence from one group to the other. And commissioning is a scramble at the end because there was no attempt to align earlier phases of projects. So there may be some people thinking, well, you can't dictate construction means and methods. Contractors need flexibility to complete their work. And I completely agree with this. We do need to allow construction experts to do their great work and optimize their workflows so they can complete construction as efficiently as possible. And they do need to be able to choose whatever means and methods suit their particular work to get the job done, right? What we need is the end of construction defined very clearly so that construction groups have a crystal clear view of the systems and sequence required to align with commissioning and startup. And then contractors can choose whatever means and methods they want to meet those construction completion deadlines, so that construction and commissioning are then aligned as construction is completed and pre-commissioning and commissioning are started. So we need to facilitate this smoother transition between these two groups so that both construction and commissioning are optimized. And the only way to do that is by clearly defining the systems that are required early in your project and the sequence of these systems, so that during transition from construction to commissioning, it takes place much smoother because everyone has a clear understanding of your project systematization. When this is defined correctly in contracts before they are awarded, then you get what you need for commissioning, even in advance of all the technical commissioning details. So some questions on CMS software. Here's that section that we can go through right away. So software is clearly an important aspect of industrial commissioning. Spreadsheets just don't cut it anymore, and you need something better to actually manage your commissioning process. So there's actually over 25 different software platforms to choose from that replace spreadsheets. And we don't make software. None of these are ours. What we've done is we've compiled the list of all the options that are currently available on the market. And we've taken a look at a lot of these to see which ones are good for specific industries and which ones are the best to use. When you upgrade from spreadsheets to better software platforms, you're able to actually manage commissioning rather than just track commissioning with spreadsheets. Everyone on your project has visibility and clarity on how to finish your project, not just your commissioning team, but all design groups and all construction groups all can visibly see within the software what's required to complete projects and how their roles feed into the end of project completions without needing to be experts in commissioning. They don't need to understand all the details. They don't need to be experts like some of your on-site testing experts will be, but they get visibility to see how everything fits together in the project for a successful completion. And you're able to have a structured and organized approach to completing commissioning. However, when you're still using spreadsheets, or worse, using nothing at all, well, I'm sure you've been in this situation where things are missing from construction. There's lots of snags during commissioning, and everything gets slowed down during commissioning because nothing's lining up. You end up with costly mistakes that are expensive to fix at the end of your project. So what I'll do after this presentation is I'll send you a copy of this list. I'll send you a link to this list and you can check it out and you can review it more closely. And I'll also show you where you can get more detailed case studies and reviews of a lot of these software systems. So you can see which software system is the best for the type of projects that you work on. A lot of these software systems are cloud-based systems, and something I do hear often is that you've talked to your IT department and they're just not going to allow it. It needs to be part of your IT network. Um, when you do get the right system, these are built on the most secure data networks in the world. The big companies like Amazon and Google that have teams of thousands of people implementing the most advanced security technology available, they have much more secure security systems than your IT department of six can put together. So these systems really don't have an issue with security anymore. So if you have that discussion with your IT group, then you may have to talk them through that these systems aren't like they were 10 years ago. These are pretty bulletproof systems that have the most advanced security technology implemented. Jerry uses Omega on projects. Yeah, I know that's quite commonly used by a lot of people. Oil and gas industry for sure. Seems to work pretty well. We do have a lot of information to share on that on Omega. It's part of our database of information, so you can definitely check that out and hear some of the case studies and reviews of people that have used that system as well as all the other ones. Yeah, it's some don't. There's still some that resist and aren't willing to use these systems, but um, you got to talk about is there legitimate reasons to resist them, which are good for water and wastewater. There are some good applications for sure. Yeah, I'll send you the list. I can point you to some reviews of people that have applied certain systems on water and wastewater. I know generally in water and wastewater, I do see a lot of spreadsheets still being used. So we do need to help the water guys, the wastewater guys get comfortable with some of these software platforms because it can certainly help advance a lot of projects there as well. So I'll share some information with you on that. High voltage substations, overhead lines. Yep, there's lots of good options there as well. I've used some particular systems that are very good to use. I can help and share some information there if you'd like to help you get a system set up for power projects. Definitely lots of good options for power projects as well. So yeah, when you get this list, you'll be able to review it a bit further. And I'll also show you where you can get some specific information for specific software and specific applications in specific industries that'll help you do some of the analysis and determine which ones are best for your projects. So moving on to the next section here, offsite testing, of course, is an essential stage of our commissioning processes to reduce risk on our projects. And I see a lot of projects that are doing somewhat of a mediocre or poor job with this offsite testing, or maybe ignoring it or leaving it to some of the vendors, manufacturers to worry about, which leaves a lot of risk to the end of your projects. I'm sure you're familiar with factory acceptance testing. We've been doing this for decades. You run a pump in the factory for a few hours, measure 3 points on the pump curve. No big deal, right? The reason for this, though, is to find problems earlier in the factory and skipping this and discovering problems later during on-site testing is, of course, going to cause a lot of problems later when we're testing. I do hear some people having the conversation, well, can we skip factory acceptance testing? What's the big deal? We're just going to test things on site. We'll save some money. And that might work for some equipment and you'll get lucky, but it's just a matter of probabilities, right? There will be one of those skipped fat tests that will bite you. And when it does, it's going to cause lots of delays during on-site testing, and it's going to be a lot more expensive to fix later than any money you thought you saved by skipping some tests in the factory. It will cost you more later in the project for sure. The bigger issue, though, is testing more complex systems in the factory. For example, your control and protection systems. These are much more complex systems that require testing of both the hardware and the software in the factory. And it's no longer appropriate just to test only the hardware and integrate the software for the first time on site. This isn't really commissioning. This is when you're doing this development. You're developing your PLC logic and you're doing integration. That's development and integration. That's not really commissioning. That will delay your on-site testing, as all groups are still continuing to develop and test PLC logic for the first time, rather than getting into commissioning and site startup. So software is just so fundamentally integral to the function of these complex systems that your cubicles are basically useless without PLC program. Both the hardware and the software must be tested properly during integrated factory acceptance testing. It's the only way to make sure that when this equipment arrives at site, that it actually works. There will certainly be lots of pressure by construction groups to ship these cubicles to site because, of course, they want to get them to site, they want to get them installed, but IFAT needs to be written into contracts so that this critical integrated testing is not skipped, thinking it will save time. When proper FAT and IFAT is implemented in your industrial commissioning process, you're finding problems much earlier in your project development cycles, and you're going to save time during on-site testing. Even with that advanced upfront time for IFAT, you're going to be much more confident that you're getting systems that work when they arrive at site. But when you're skipping factory acceptance testing, thinking you're saving time and money, you'll invariably encounter delays later that cost you even more than what you thought you saved by skipping some upfront testing. Your project gets delayed and you'll miss your in-service date every time. You'll end up leaving too much risk to the end of your project when it's a lot more expensive to fix. So the next section here is construction completions, and I'm sure you're familiar with construction completions, right? Punch list walkdowns, deficiency categorization, your mechanical completions. This is an important stage of the industrial commissioning process and likely your most challenging part of projects. If you've done a good job with your contracts, then this transition can go well and the rest of your commissioning becomes so much easier. But underestimate this stage of projects and commissioning will be a nightmare. A lot of projects allow construction groups to define construction completions, thinking it's their means and methods to complete construction. And when contracts are missing these details, then there's a complete mismatch between construction and commissioning. And it's great that construction groups have optimized their construction sequence. We certainly need to let them do that, but it doesn't help when commissioning is misaligned with construction. If construction groups have optimized for their workflows with no regard for commissioning, then we end up getting systems out of sequence, right? If part of our commissioning sequence requires that we need system A first, but construction groups have decided that they're going to install and hand over system A last, then we've lost all that time on projects. If there's, say, a 7-month gap between that, then that maybe was ideal for construction, but that's not ideal for the overall project because we've lost that time in our projects. So we need to be aligning these two groups in contracts so that everything lines up much better and we can have a much smoother transition from one group to the other. It is called the construction industry after all. So construction groups have dominated the industry. However, this doesn't help projects. We need better alignment between construction and commissioning groups so everyone can work together to achieve successful commissioning and startup to meet our project in service dates. All groups need to be successful for the entire project to be successful, which is why projects require an upfront effort to properly plan construction completions as part of the overall industrial commissioning process. I'm sure you're familiar with type A, type B, type C punch categories. This is the process of formalizing these walkdowns and tracking these completions in software. This all goes back to the systematization we created earlier, the definition of each static completion and the sequence that each of these are required. When you have robust construction completions as part of your industrial commissioning process, the transition between construction and commissioning goes much smoother with everyone able to collaborate and solve problems together because the process is well defined and everyone knows what is required to achieve your project in service date. However, when construction completions are poorly defined or not defined at all in your contracts, then construction groups will determine what you get for commissioning. And of course, you won't get what you need, since it's only natural that construction groups will optimize for their construction activities. And you can't even fault them for this, because they're under cost and schedule pressure, and they're going to optimize for that rather than optimize for commissioning. But you end up missing your in-service date, with commissioning being a scramble at the end to complete. A better approach is to put in the upfront effort into this complex stage of projects, so that you're starting with the end in mind and you can plan for commissioning success rather than just spinning the wheel and seeing what you get at the end. Okay, the last part of your commissioning process, because we're getting tight here for time, does look like we're going to go a little bit past the hour, but I hope you have some additional time, because we need to go through on-site testing here. When people hear the word commissioning, this is likely what they think it means, right? Testing at the end, not realizing that there are 5 other stages of the process that must take place before your on-site testing even starts. It's why your industrial commissioning process must start earlier in projects, so that we've captured all stages of the commissioning process. Because if you start too late and only focus on on-site testing, then you've missed most of the process and you're not going to have much success with commissioning. If you've done a good job of all previous stages of your commissioning process, then your on-site testing should go pretty smoothly. But if earlier stages of your commissioning process have not gone well, or you've skipped some or all of them and left commissioning to the end of your project, then you can likely expect problems during on-site testing. When people think of commissioning, they think of pre-commissioning, commissioning, startup, performance verification, handover. These are all the terms that are commonly used on site, right? And this is what people think commissioning is. But there's a few more pieces to the commissioning puzzle than just on-site testing. All earlier stages of your commissioning process is what will determine how successful your on-site testing is. On-site testing is where the rubber hits the road. And if you've skipped earlier stages of your commissioning process, then you'll very quickly get overwhelmed. You'll be in firefighting mode very quickly, just trying to keep your head above water. And this is unfortunately what's driving a lot of people away from the industry, because they don't want to deal with the chaos of poorly planned commissioning. With a fully developed industrial commissioning process starting earlier in your projects, on-site commissioning actually becomes much more easy to complete. You have the ability to forecast the end of your project, and you can actually control whether or not you meet your project and service date. However, when you're stuck with the industry norm, thinking that commissioning is on-site testing at the end, then you'll get random results every time on your projects. Some will go well because you have great people that truly understand commissioning, but other projects will have problems because people are less familiar with what's really required for commissioning. It only makes sense that projects have a robust process for industrial commissioning and include all pieces of your commissioning puzzle earlier in projects, so that things go much better at the end and you're not missing any of the pieces later. So what's next? How do you start implementing this on your projects? What I've described today is the gold standard to achieve on projects. There certainly are lots of projects that are operating at this level, but there are many others that are not doing any of this. And when you're part of our commissioning community, we'll help you get there. So don't feel bad if your projects don't quite look like this yet. Achieving these higher levels of commissioning will take an iterative process to make incremental improvements. And you're likely going to have questions and need some support along the way. So do you agree that implementing what we've discussed today on your projects will produce better results? Are you willing to promise me that you'll take even just small baby steps to start applying these commissioning principles to your projects, so that we can see better results on our capital projects? Today, we've discussed the 6 fundamental aspects of your industrial commissioning process. We talked about commissioning in your construction contracts. We talked about project systematization. We talked about the commissioning software you need to use, and there was lots of interest and good questions on that. I'll share some more information to help you in that area. We talked about your offsite testing, particularly the importance of integrated factory acceptance testing. We talked about construction completions and how to ensure this goes smoothly. And we briefly talked about on-site commissioning and startup to achieve your project in service date here. So today's presentation is short, right? I can't possibly cover every aspect of commissioning in a short presentation like this. And commissioning is complex. As we've discussed, there's a lot of pieces to the commissioning puzzle. You're going to have questions along the way. So I suppose you have three options for what you do next. The first option is you can do nothing. That's a choice, right? You can maintain the status quo on your projects and continue with cowboy commissioning if that's what you've been doing and that's what you're used to and that's what you want to continue with. You can certainly make a choice to do nothing. Your section option is you can take everything we've discussed here today and you can start applying each of these 6 aspects to your projects and start implementing these processes on your own to elevate your project delivery processes for commissioning. And this is a totally legitimate way to go. This is what I've done over the last 10 years is apply these principles to my projects and see what works and see what doesn't and figure out how to create successful projects with all of these commissioning aspects on your projects. That's a totally legitimate way to go. Or your third option is you can get some support along the way and have someone who can answer any questions that you have, someone that's completed commissioning many times before, and that's helped many other people structure their projects properly for commissioning success. So which one of those sounds like a good idea to you? Does it sound like a good idea to have someone to ask questions along the way? Type yes in the chat if you think it would be helpful to have someone to answer your questions as you start to implement these processes on your projects. I'll write yes in the chat because I think this is a good idea. I sure wish I had someone to help me figure this stuff out years ago and to be able to ask questions to set my projects up for success when I was trying to figure all this stuff out on my own years ago. If you're thinking some support along the way would be a good option, then I do have something that might be perfect for you. Let me introduce you to the Industrial Commissioning Association. At ICXA, our mission is to elevate the importance of commissioning and the value it provides to projects. We're challenging the status quo on projects to achieve better outcomes during commissioning because we believe that when more people understand commissioning on projects, the better our project outcomes will be. When you think about it, finishing projects is the most important part of them, right? And commissioning is the fundamental method to complete projects. So when more people know how to complete projects during commissioning, that can only mean that the entire industry becomes better at meeting their project objectives. And doesn't it suck that many projects will be started blissfully unaware of how to complete them during commissioning? Well, we're pushing forward to try and change that by helping more people understand how to finish their projects during commissioning. And if you'd like to be part of this initiative to elevate the importance of commissioning on projects, then join us at the Industrial Commissioning Association and we'll help more projects succeed with commissioning. Membership is only $15 a month, and membership comes with a lot of pretty incredible benefits that I'll go through here. I did see some questions here. Let's see. I'd like to share this video recording. Absolutely. Yeah, I will share a link of this video recording at the end. Feel free to share it with others. The more people that understand commissioning, the better. So, yeah, you'll get the link and you can share it for sure. Do this CXPM training include CMS software training? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. It goes through how to set it up, how to use it of one particular system. Once you understand how to use one software system, they're all very similar. Some are better than others, of course, but the principles are all very, very similar. So that is included in our training. Is the final exam under supervision of PMI? No, it is not. The exam is online. Once you go through all the material, you can take the exam. A passing mark of 90% is required. If that doesn't happen on your first attempt, no problem. You can rewrite the exam until you eventually do pass it. Can you share the sample pic of the certificate? Which authority it's approved? I don't have it on hand here of an actual picture. I think if you go to the training enrollment page, you can actually see a copy of the certificate. We are an authorized training partner with the Project Management Institute. So ultimately, They're the ones saying that we are an authorized training partner to provide this training. We also are accredited by the Engineering Institute of Canada. They are the ones providing accreditation and the CEU and PDH hours that you get when you complete the course. What does corporate membership include for people in the organization? Absolutely. Let's go through that. So as a member, you get access to the complete structure of the industrial commissioning process. So everything we've discussed today for the 6 fundamental aspects of commissioning. So what needs to be included in your construction contracts, systematization of your projects during FEED. We have information on all that. What's required for offsite testing, particularly for integrated factory acceptance testing. How to structure your construction completions. That's all in there. How to ensure your on-site testing goes smoothly. The value you get from just this one section within the membership area is way much more than the small cost of membership. Plus, you also receive a quarterly newsletter to keep you updated with the trends in the commissioning industry. And I do think things are going to change very quickly with everything you hear about AI and the software. Things are going to change way quicker in the next 5 years than the last 5 years. So this is a good way to keep in touch and stay up to date. Here's a pretty nice benefit. As an ICXA member, you get a 30% discount on any of our Commissioning Academy training programs. So this is pretty sweet that you can get your certificate in commissioning project management, if you'd like, at a discount when you're a member. You get access to premium content such as member interviews and Q&A sessions. And this is a good way to not only learn from me, but to learn from others in the industry that are working on commissioning and the challenges they're facing and how they're applying these commissioning principles to their projects. It's great to hear from everyone in the industry. You get access to our exclusive jobs network, and it includes contracting opportunities. So we have a projects database where you can get logged in and you can see all the projects that are being built all over the world to find the next project that you want to work on and actually find the names of the owners and the companies that are working on these projects that are the ones that are actually hiring and looking for people on these projects. And there's thousands of people required on projects, right? And there's such an unprecedented amount of work that people are looking for individuals with skills to work on projects. It's a huge challenge for sure. A lot of people are joining because we've included a database of all of the commissioning software platforms. So we've got some case studies that they provided us with reviews, so you can actually hear from some of their clients that have applied these software systems on their projects and see use cases and their experiences for how they worked in different industries. So this is a good way to evaluate each of the software options that are available and see which one is the best for your projects. People are always asking me, like earlier in the presentation, right, which software to use? Well, this is how you determine that, by getting access to this database and hearing from people that have actually used these software systems on projects and can give you their real world experience of how they worked and what went well and what didn't work well, and hearing their experiences. So I have used some of those software platforms. I'm familiar with a lot of them. I certainly haven't used them all on every project. That would mean completing 25 different projects, one with each different software platform. So when you hear from people that have actually used a particular software platform and applied it in their industry, that's the best kind of experience or reference you can get to know which one might be suitable for your projects. So you can pick the right one. So also as a member, there's lots of great networking opportunities with other commissioning professionals from all over the world. You get access to the members and you can have a chat with them. And like I mentioned, you can also get access to our projects database and see what else is being built in the world. So you're always up to speed on the latest project developments. The additional benefit as a corporate member is you also get listed in our, I think it's cut off on the bottom of the page there, but at the bottom there, if you go to the site, you can see we have a corporate directory that we're just putting together here. It's not quite launched on the site yet, but we'll get that launched there soon, of all the corporations that are members of our organization, that gets listed publicly for everybody to see as well. So it's pretty incredible that you get access to all of this for only $15 a month. And you might be wondering, well, why is it such an incredible value for such a low cost? So like I mentioned earlier, our mission is to get this information in the hands of as many people as possible. If we're going to improve commissioning on projects, then we need more people to understand commissioning. The more successful our projects will be is when we get this information in the right hands of people. And I truly believe that this is the missing part of projects. When project teams don't know how to finish their projects during commissioning, then it's no wonder most projects are late and over budget. So if we can fix commissioning on projects, then we can improve the performance of completing capital projects on time and on budget. So for $15 per month, it's really a pretty easy decision to join. We've made this expertise accessible for everyone, and there's really no excuse anymore to be struggling with commissioning on your projects when you can get access to it right here. We've made the solutions available to everyone to start implementing these improvements on projects so we can all achieve better project outcomes during commissioning. Everyone is welcome to join. We want to help everyone with commissioning. So commissioning professionals, project managers, design engineers, construction groups, we need everyone, project owners and developers. Everyone can benefit from an understanding of commissioning on projects. We want to help everyone understand how to finish projects during commissioning, since this is the most important part of projects, actually finishing them. So if you've been looking online and the only information you've been able to find is related to building commissioning, but you're looking for more information related to complex process and energy commissioning, energy system commissioning, then ICXA is right for you. If you've been assigned a new commissioning role and have been looking for a standard to follow or best practices to implement on your projects, then ICXA is a good resource for you too. If you haven't been able to find a dedicated global network for commissioning professionals and want to collaborate and learn best practices from others, then ICXA is perfect for you. If you're on a project and your manager just really isn't providing much direction to you on what's required for commissioning, maybe because they're not as familiar with commissioning and you need some guidance on commissioning best practices, then ICXA is probably what you need. If your intention has been to stop using spreadsheets to track commissioning and you've been meaning to upgrade to commissioning software, then ICXA is a great resource for you to rely on to help you make that transition. The Industrial Commissioning Association is here to help you wherever you are on your commissioning journey, to help you and your projects succeed with commissioning. As a commissioning professional, it can sometimes feel a bit lonely at the end of projects when we're the last ones left fixing all the problems on projects and there's nobody around to ask any questions. ICXA is a great way to stay connected and bounce ideas off other commissioning professionals. You can become a member and get access to this vast amount of commissioning expertise at icxa.net. Join us as we elevate the importance of commissioning on projects and show others the value that it provides to the industry. As a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, I mentioned you get access to our accredited commissioning training programs at a 30% discount. If sometime in the future you'd like to get your certificate in commissioning project management, then we've got a program that meets your needs. We've got a program designed specifically for project managers and commissioning managers. If you want to understand how to create and implement an industry best commissioning process, everything that we've discussed here today, then this is a perfect solution to help project leaders understand the processes to set up for commissioning best practices and give their projects the best chance of success. We also have a program designed specifically for engineers and technicians that want to understand how to follow and execute industry best processes. This is perfect for people executing commissioning as well, so they understand how their technical skills apply within the commissioning process. Both of these options are tailored exactly for each of these project-specific roles, so you have a clear understanding of how each role applies to the success of commissioning. This is a great way to get guided support to understand the commissioning process fast, rather than having to learn on the fly on your own. And you can consider either of these options in the future or relatively soon once you become a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association. As an authorized training partner with the Project Management Institute and accredited by the Engineering Institute of Canada, we're able to offer Project Management Institute training that is recognized worldwide. So this is a great certification to have. In fact, we are the only authorized commissioning training partner with PMI. So you have confidence knowing you're getting the best processes for commissioning from an authorized training partner. The PMI and EIC credentials are proudly displayed on your certificate when you pass the final exam in the course. And I wish I had an example of that certificate to show you, because you would be able to see it. But essentially what you see on the screen is displayed on your certificate once you pass the final exam. Once you complete the course, you also receive accredited CEU and PDH professional development credits. And we're able to provide this now that we are certified by these organizations. And these are displayed on your certificate as well and can be used to fulfill your professional development requirements. These prestigious credentials show others that you're ready to get results with commissioning project management. And we are the only provider where you can get these certifications for commissioning. Again, this is something you can consider now, or you can consider in the future after you become a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association. So here's how this works. To become a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, you can go to icxa.net. At the top, where that big red arrow is pointing, you can click on Join Now. This will take you to the enrollment page where you can become a member for only $15 a month. That's pretty incredible. Enroll right away and you get instant access to everything we just discussed. And then if you'd like at some point in the future, after you've had a chance to check out everything that's in the members portal there, you may choose to enroll in one of our further training programs and get your certificate as well. So this is perfect for project managers and commissioning managers that are creating and implementing commissioning processes for their team to follow to make sure they're implementing commissioning best practices, and perfect for engineers, technicians, really anyone that's working on projects that wants to understand the commissioning process, the stages of commissioning, and what takes place during each stage, and how to apply their technical expertise to commissioning. And really for anyone that wants to finally understand all parts of the commissioning process from the only globally authorized and accredited commissioning training provider. This is also perfect for companies that need to standardize and streamline commissioning with new systems and processes and start incorporating better processes for commissioning within their project delivery. We've made it easy to get the commissioning support you need so you can start improving your project outcomes during commissioning. So start with becoming a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association. And then at some point, if you'd like, you can also consider some of our training programs in the future. This way, you get support now through our membership to start improving your commissioning processes. And you can get that at icxa.net right away to sign up and become a member. What I can tell you is that you can literally change the entire trajectory of your projects when you apply these 6 aspects of the industrial commissioning process to your projects. Because when you have robust processes for commissioning, all project groups can work together, solve problems together, and all contribute to the success of commissioning together. So if you want to set your capital projects up for the best chance of success during commissioning, take advantage of these support options that are available and get the knowledge and expertise you need to be successful with capital project commissioning. All right. So that's the end of the actual presentation. I do have a bit of time here for some Q&A. If there's any additional questions you'd like to ask, please shoot them into the chat and I'll watch for them and get them answered. There typically are some very common questions I get at this point in the presentation. So I'll just go through a few of those while you enter some of your questions into the chat, and I'll get your questions answered here. So people often ask me at this point is, well, why do I need commissioning software? Our spreadsheets have been working just fine for us for years. Well, without a system or without standardized processes for commissioning, then what you're really doing is you're relying 100% on your people to get the job done. And that's only going to get you so far, right? Because like we discussed, the good commissioning people, they're just not available anymore. Our wise commissioning experts are retiring, and there's just an unprecedented amount of work that it's getting harder and harder to find people to be able to work on projects. And when good people retire or move on to other projects, then you've really got nothing except for your outdated spreadsheets. So if you want to transfer commissioning knowledge to the younger generations, don't write a document. Nobody's going to read or understand that. It's a better approach is to build your processes right into your software tools that people are using on a daily basis to guide them on what they need to do for commissioning. So if you want to grow and expand and you want to take on more projects, then you can't rely entirely on your people. You need systems and processes to back them up. It's the only way to survive on projects with the challenges that we're faced with on a daily basis. Gulam, when expected PMI show this certificate? So yeah, hopefully they'll respond today and they'll let me know. One thing I will caution you with is if the certificate is your only focus, then I would suggest you focus on the knowledge and expertise more so than the certificate. Um, when you're looking for roles on projects, there isn't anybody that's going to hire you based on the certificate on your wall. Maybe the certificate will get you the interview, but when you're in that interview, people want to know what you know and that you can actually deliver results for them on projects. So if the certificate is your only focus, I'd suggest that's probably not the right approach. A better approach is to actually learn and understand this stuff because that's what will get you the job. People want to know that you can deliver and produce results on projects. They don't care about the certificate that's hanging on your wall. So I hope that helps. Is the membership? Sorry, let's go back here a bit more. When is the best time to start development of the commissioning plan? Start working on commissioning on engineering phase or when construction starts? So during our feed processes, as soon as you have your tag list developed, that's really the point in time to start developing a lot of these processes. Of course, if it's an EPC contract, you're going to have to start developing a lot of that earlier, even in advance of the tag list, because a lot of these details need to go into construction contracts. So it's certainly before construction starts because a lot of that gets defined in contracts. Is the membership fee charged monthly? Yes, the membership fee is charged monthly. Is it easy to join and quit? Yes, it is easy to join and quit. It's a monthly subscription. There's no long-term commitment. You can join at any point. If you complete your project and you've got all the information and you need to cancel your membership, that's not a problem at all. It's easy to do. The best advice for team lid. Define lid. Team lid. What are you referring to there? Curtis, I'm putting together recommendations to improve project outcomes for a city capital project improvement. They currently do not have a set of commissioning processes, and it varies depending on what constitutes consultants put in specs. Even though some of their systems are relatively simply, a lot of yeah, so your consultants, one thing to be aware of, your consultants will be putting the technical requirements for commissioning into specifications. Consultants typically, I've never seen consultants provide anything for the commercial or project management aspects of commissioning. And I see that often get missed, thinking you got a spec, you've got some technical requirements for commissioning, we're good to go, put this out for bid. But there's a whole other aspect of all your commercial and project management aspects that your consultants won't provide you. It's just not their area of expertise. They're technical consultants, right? They're providing technical recommendations and technical requirements. So you need to make sure that everything is being captured for commercial and project management aspects of commissioning. Everything that we've talked about here in this presentation to define all 6 portions of your commissioning process need to be properly defined in contracts. So my recommendation is don't rely entirely on your consultants. You still need your commissioning lead, your commissioning manager to oversee all of your commissioning process to make sure that what your consultants are providing you from a technical perspective fit into your overall and comprehensive commissioning process for your project. So that's my recommendation. If you don't have the experience, a cert means little. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Don't focus exclusively on the certificate, right? This knowledge and expertise is going to help you on projects further develop and grow as you continue to get on-site experience. The two both go hand in hand, right? You need the knowledge and you need the experience. So what we'll give you is the knowledge here. We'll point you in the right direction on projects you can go find so that you can continue to learn and grow. Commissioning is definitely a commitment to lifelong learning. So here's where you start learning to get some of this knowledge and expertise and soak it all up so that you can then continue with your on-site role and continue to learn and grow into more senior commissioning roles. Lots of good questions. If you've got any more, shoot them in the chat there for sure. So some people sometimes ask me, well, why do I need a different process to manage commissioning? We've been managing commissioning just fine for years. Well, you don't actually need new processes for your commissioning. We want you to continue with the way you've been doing commissioning and what's working for you on projects. But when your commissioning processes reside within one or two of your commissioning experts or in a document that nobody reads or you're missing earlier stages of the process, then there's room for improvement, right? And I believe that when more people understand what's required for commissioning without needing to be a commissioning expert, then everyone on projects is able to contribute to the success of commissioning rather than leaving this all to the end for the commissioning guys to sort out later. So you need to be building your commissioning processes into a tool, into a software tool early in your projects so that everyone can see what's required for commissioning and they can easily understand what's required regardless of their understanding of commissioning. Because when only a few people on your project, your commissioning experts, know what's required, then it's very difficult to learn and collaborate and solve problems together. Emmanuel, what is your advice for someone changing career to commissioning professional? So it depends where you're coming from. Really, to transition into commissioning, you need a pretty strong technical background, some project experience. Could be anything though. You could be part of the design group doing technical designs. Could be part of the construction group with some really good on-site experience. And then you want to apply those technical skills within the commissioning process. So the best place to start is then to learn and understand what is the commissioning process. And that's what we provide here through our Commissioning Academy training program and the resources we provide for support through the Industrial Commissioning Association is to get that baseline set of knowledge on what commissioning is really all about so that when you go to projects and continue to learn and grow and gain that commissioning experience, you have that knowledge and understanding. It's typically been the other way around is people are just thrown out into the field and learn on the fly. And that's a pretty painful way to learn. Coming armed and equipped with some of this baseline knowledge first makes that learning experience on site a lot easier to go through. So that would be my best advice. If someone's coming from, say, the project controls group as an accountant, well, they don't necessarily have that project's technical background to then apply within the commissioning experience. So it might depend on where you're transitioning from. If you're coming from HR and looking to get into commissioning, maybe not a good fit. But if you've got a technical background, then this is the best place for you to start right here. People sometimes ask me, well, does this apply to all industries? And the answer is yes. This applies to all industrial plant processes and energy systems because the same risk-based approach to project management applies to all projects that have any sort of E&M equipment that needs to function together as one plant system. It doesn't really matter what's in the pipes if you've got oil in your pipes or you've got wastewater in your pipes, or if you've got chocolate sauce, the same approach to commissioning is required to make all of the E&M equipment work together at the end. And if project teams aren't following these industry best processes for commissioning, then that's probably the reason they're having problems with commissioning. So one thing to note, there is a distinction between technical commissioning and commissioning project management, right? Technical commissioning will always be different on all projects in all industries. The breakers to close and the valves to open, these are always specific to the project that you're working on. Even two projects within the same industry are going to have specific technical commissioning, but the same project management risk-based approach to commissioning is required for all industrial projects for commissioning to be successful, regardless of the industry. So yes, the standardized processes that we help project teams implement apply to all industrial plant systems. some people ask me, well, this all sounds good, but I just don't have time for it right now. I'm busy. And I totally get it. Projects life is busy. Your days are fast paced on site and there's a lot going on. But that's why we're here, is to help you, because we know you're busy and we want to make this easier for you, to help you and support you on your projects so that you can get your projects set up for commissioning success before the damage is done on projects. If your project has already started, then it's already time to get these systems and processes set up and start onboarding new people to your projects. So don't miss your chance. If you're busy right now, I totally get it, but you need to start getting ready for commissioning before it's too late and there's nothing you can do to fix it later. So there's some urgent items that you do need to get in place now if you want commissioning to go well later. And we're definitely here to help you and support you with getting you set up. So there were some earlier questions on, is this, who's certifying this? Is this recognized worldwide? We are a PMI authorized training partner, and we are able to offer this training to everyone in all locations all over the world. You know that PMI is the globally recognized authority for project management, and we are the only authorized commissioning training partner that provides this training all over the world on commissioning project management. In fact, the training that we offer is the missing part of project management on capital projects to actually complete capital projects successfully during commissioning. If you were to get PMP certified, that's definitely a great start, but you're still missing the part of how to actually complete projects. So if you want to be trained and certified on commissioning project management, then you're in the right place. Submit your application and we'll be able to help you out. Okay, so if there's no more questions in the chat, we'll leave it there for today. So definitely consider becoming a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, and you can do that at icxa.net, and we'll see you in the members area. So before we conclude, watch your email. I will send you the links that we discussed here today. So I'll send you a link to this replay, and by all means, feel free to share it with any others that you want. I'll send you a link to the software list that we looked at, so you can review that a bit more closely. And I'll also send you the link that you see on the screen to the Industrial Commissioning Association, so you can check that out as well if you like. So all of this, everything we've discussed today, is so that we can help you get the industry best practices you need for capital project commissioning. So I want to thank everyone for joining. Lots of good questions, lots of good engagement, and I look forward to helping you succeed with commissioning. Have a great day.